What exactly happens when you trash talk a player as good as Caitlin Clark? Many fans don't know this, but trash talking is a big part of the WNBA. However, if there's one athlete you don't want to try it with, it's Caitlin Clark.
Victoria Vivian's an old Indiana Fever player.
Exactly what happens when you trash talk Caitlin Clark is what you'll see, and it'll make you wonder why opponents ever dare to try. Some fans and opponents have tried it and learned the hard way that trash talking Caitlin Clark is a huge mistake.
Caitlin Clark, left side, she doesn't even look at her, waves her hand as if to say, I don't care about you, I'm not.
Caitlin Clark has a long history of standing up to bullies, and she has never backed down, even as a young girl, but we'll get to that story later. Clark is a serious baller, even when unprovoked, easily one of the best female basketball players, but trash talking makes her turn up the heat even more. The last time wasn't even from a player, it was from a ref. She hit the padding on the back of the hoop, got teed up, and couldn't believe it.
Right there. That's a foul.
Listen to what she had to say in the press conference about what the ref told her was the reason.
I got a technical for basically being mad at myself because I missed the three and then I went and hit the backboard.
She decided to take the ref's motivation and turn it into 23 points, 9 assists, and the W. I'd say that ref had no idea what he was unleashing with such a ridiculous call.
But I think he fired me up to continue to play a lot harder. I thought we got a lot better after he did that, so I want to thank him.
And the trash talking that followed, her performance definitely shut him up. Then again, she has been shutting people up for years. Remember the Iowa State overrated game? It was December 2023, and this time when her Iowa Hawkeyes team traveled to Hilton Coliseum to take on Iowa State. Despite the boos coming from the students section every time she got the ball, and chants of overrated coming from the Cyclones fans all through the night, Clark stayed locked in and ended the game with not just the win, but also 35 points and a new NCAA record.
Spent. Clark. You're not that tired. That wrist.
And 35 was a light night compared to the Elite Eight in March of the last season. Clark's Iowa Hawkeyes were up against the Louisville Cardinals in what would be a defining game in Caitlin's college career story. We're not sure what brewed in the background, but on the night, not only did the Iowa star drop a wicked 41-point triple-double, she also flexed on her opponents by mimicking John Cena's trademark "you can't see me" gesture. Clark later claimed to have been gesturing toward her team's strength coach, but what everyone saw was her flexing on her opponents after doubts about her skill had been talked about in the media before the game. That performance helped Iowa get to the national championship game that year. This epic rivalry was legendary and would begin the feud between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark for many games to come. The Hawkeyes were up against Angel Reese's LSU Tigers, and despite Clark putting up a good stat line, the real story was Angel Reese mocking Caitlin Clark in front of a sold-out crowd. Before the game was over, as LSU closed in on victory against Iowa, Angel Reese took shots at Clark by doing the "you can't see me" gesture and pointing to her ring finger since her team would be getting championship rings.
And Angel Reese knows a ring is coming.
From a neutral standpoint, that was a good comeback since Clark had just done the same gesture to her opponents a couple of games back. Angel Reese got the last laugh that night as her team went on to championship glory, and everyone thought that was the end of it. Well, it wasn't. A year later, during the 2024 Elite Eight, LSU and Iowa were up against each other again, and although it wasn't a championship game, Caitlin Clark made sure to get her revenge on Angel Reese and her teammates by doing all her talking on the floor. She legit took matters into her own hands by putting up an insane 41 points, 12 assists, and 7 rebounds to give her team a 94-87 victory.
Caitlin Clark once again dancing with the basketball, seeing it.
And it's fair to say that game set the tone for how Caitlin Clark would continue to respond to trash talking from either fans, the media, or her opponents. Right from when she declared for the 2024 WNBA draft, Clark already had a ton of doubters and haters saying she wouldn't be able to play as well as she did in college when she turned pro, and she began proving them all wrong from her debut.
I think I could have done a better job of kind of regaining my cool, but That's like the fire of passion that just gets me going.
Before we get into how she has handled trash talk since coming into the WNBA, remember that comment about Caitlin having a long history of standing up to bullies? And by long history, we're talking about as far back as when she was a kid. In her own words, quote, "No matter if it was a board game, a card game, I was going to do whatever it took to win. I got kicked out of PE class because I was too competitive," end quote.
All I wanted to do was win, no matter if it was a board game, a card game, really anything. Like, I just was going to do whatever it took to win. I got in trouble in school all the time for wanting to win so bad. I got kicked out of PE class because I was so competitive.
She has also told the story of the time she shoved her younger brother against the wall just because he beat her in a game.
Vividly remember it. Like, I literally got so mad. I think he had just scored on me. I literally grabbed him with two hands and just launched him into the wall.
Apparently, this attitude has translated into her game as a basketball player, making her respond to trash talk or criticism in the best way possible by putting up unstoppable performances. One of the first times we got to see this side of her was while she was in high school, playing for Dowling Catholic High School in West Des Moines. While playing at home, the opposing school's students kept making fun of her, calling her overrated for the first minute of the game. Guess what? Clark ended up responding by dropping 42 points on their team that night. And she has been putting up 30-plus point nights all the way to the bank in the pros. Her first game saw the Indiana Fever travel to Connecticut to face the Suns, and although her team ended up with a blowout 92-71 loss, Clark still put up an impressive 20 points, 3 assists, and 2 steals. Of course, she struggled with parts of her game that night, but putting up such crazy numbers on a professional debut is one way to silence the haters. And she wasn't done. One of the biggest naysayers when Caitlin Clark was coming into the league was former UConn standout and current 10-time All-Star for the Phoenix Mercury, Diana Taurasi. The veteran, in an interview earlier in 2024, said this about Clark, quote, "Reality is coming. There's levels to this thing. You see it on the NBA side, and you're going to see it on this side where you look superhuman.
But you're going to come with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time."
Well, to cut a long story short, so far in Clark's first season in the league,
Reality is coming.
Okay.
She has played against Taurasi's team thrice and has contributed majorly to the Fever winning every time. The first time was in June when the Indiana Fever defeated the Phoenix Mercury 88-82 in their own house. On this night, Clark finished with 15 points, 9 rebounds, and a game-high 12 assists.
Fourth fastest pace of play, and that suits Caitlin Clark.
But she was only just getting started. In July, this time with the Fever at home, Clark put up 20 points, another game-high 13 assists, and 6 rebounds to help her team get an emphatic 95-86 victory.
Well, what a valiant response.
But was she done? Nope, not just yet. In their most recent meeting in August, the Fever won 98-89, and Clark finished this time not just with the highest assists, but also the highest points as she scored 29 points, made 10 assists, and had 5 rebounds. She hasn't given a worded reply to Diana Taurasi's words, but she probably doesn't need to, as she has ensured Taurasi never sees a win with her on the floor. Remember the episode with Angel Reese we mentioned earlier? Well, both ladies have spoken in the media about their trash talking being a thing of the past, but it's not that simple for Caitlin Clark, even now that they're both in the WNBA. Clark has played against Angel Reese's Chicago Sky thrice this season. In the first game, she had 11 points, 8 rebounds, and a game-high 6 assists to help the Fever get a 71-70 win.
To waste the clock, up to Clark. Clark throws it up in the air.
She was more emphatic in the second game, having a game-high 23 points, game-high 9 assists, and 8 rebounds to get her team yet another win. And although the Chicago Sky won on their third meeting by a narrow 1 point, our girl CC still showed up, scoring 17 points, having 6 rebounds, and finishing with a game-high 13 assists. Don't know what you think, but there's definitely a pattern of Caitlin Clark turning up the heat once she's up against any player who has talked trash about her. You should also know that Clark's response is the same even when the trash talk comes from her own fans. Take the Fever blowout loss to the Las Vegas Aces in early July, for example. On the night, Clark finished with 13 points, 11 assists, and 6 rebounds, which isn't so bad.
The college level here in this. Caitlin Clark, and now back-to-back buckets for the Fever.
But she came under a lot of fire, not only because her team lost by 19 points, but also because of her poor shooting, as she made only 4 out of an attempted 12 shots the entire night. Seeing as this game was one of the most watched and biggest games of the season, a lot of fans came for Clark, calling her overrated and comparing her with Aces guard Kelsey Plum, who picked up 34 points on 11 of 20 shooting from the field on the same night. Despite a lot of attacks on social media from both Indiana fans and neutrals, Caitlin Clark didn't respond with words. Instead, she waited for the next game, which was against the New York Liberty just 4 days later. And we have to say, her performance on this night was one for the history books. This lady really put the Fever team on her back and led them to victory with 19 points, 13 assists, and 12 rebounds. In the process, she became the first ever WNBA rookie to notch a triple-double and ended Indiana's 9-game losing streak to New York. There's still a lot to learn about Caitlin Clark and how good she is, but one thing we know from these experiences is that Caitlin responds to trash talk with all-timer performances on the court. So except when she's on your team, talking trash to or about this lady might not be the best move. What do you think about how Caitlin Clark responds to trash talking? Let us know in the comments section, and enjoy our other videos.